And good evening, everyone. I'm Bill Ritter of WABC TV, Channel 7 Eyewitness News, and this is the Countdown Election Edition for the 2020 race for the White House. Tonight, we focus on the Iowa caucuses, the first voting contest of the Democratic primary race. Joining me here in studio tonight in New York to discuss it all and more, Eyewitness News political reporter Dave Evans, he's the one on the right, and Christine Quinn, the vice chair of the New York State Democratic Committee and the former speaker of the New York City Council. She's the one on the left. I'm going to put my earpiece back in because it fell out. Both of you, thank you very much and welcome.
Of course.
Let's get a top of the show prediction for what you think is going to happen tonight. What do we look for? 30 seconds, Chris.
Well, we look for who comes in second and third. There's a big belief, and I think it's probably right, that Bernie's going to win tonight. Who comes in second and third and how close they are, critical to the future of this race.
And who's looking very interestingly, who's not on the ballot?
Mike Bloomberg, absolutely. He hovers over all of this, no question.
David?
I agree completely with her, because if you look at Bill Clinton, I think he came in fourth in 1992 and went on to win the nomination. He was badly damaged, I think, by Iowa, but still, if you look at the last 4 or 5 elections that they've had, the person who either wins or comes in second is the eventual nominee.
And so Barack Obama in 08 won with 38% of the vote. Who heard of him before that?
It was a bad night, right?
Okay.
It is important.
We're going to dig in the weeds a little later. We want to get a feel of what's happening first and get to Iowa, where ABC News reporter Marcy Gonzalez is live in Des Moines for us. Marcy, are you there? Can you hear me? Can you see me? You can't see me, but can you hear me?
Hey there, Bill. Yeah, I hear you perfectly.
Hi, Marcy. Well,
yeah.
So I think this is your first Iowa caucus, right?
It is my first Iowa caucus. 4 years ago, I covered the primary in New Hampshire, but this is my first time doing the first in the nation contest.
So to give us a feel for it, I'm not interested in who you handicap to win, but what's happening there? 1,600 places where the caucus takes place to get these 47 delegates. What's it feel like there? I know there's electricity in the air.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of excitement, a lot of buildup, just especially with 3 of the candidates not able to be here for this final day, for this final push to get out and energize voters. They've been relying on their surrogates. They've been relying on their supporters to go out and do this last-minute door knocking and trying to get a gauge of how the voters are feeling going into caucus night, going in with a whole game plan. When they knock on the door, if someone says they're undecided, well, that's an opportunity to still try to win people over and get them to go with their candidate as their first choice going into caucus night. But there are a lot of people, who are kind of teetering between a few different candidates and trying to figure out who they're going to put first. But I'll tell you, they were out canvassing, campaigning, really up until the last minute, but now everyone's starting to make their way to the caucus sites. Time is starting to run out, and so people are having to make those decisions. So we'll start to get some answers pretty soon here, Bill.
And Marcy, that includes the people coming there, the 4 senators who are on the ballot tonight in Iowa as part of the caucus, not on the ballot, but in the caucus voting. The 4 senators who were jurors in the Donald Trump impeachment trial.
Right. So the senators who are running for president, of course, had to dash back to Washington. They were here yesterday. They held events up until last night. Some of them had Super Bowl parties and then got on planes, flew back to Washington, were there for closing arguments of the impeachment trial. And now they're making their way back here to Iowa. They all have events planned here in Des Moines for this evening so they can watch the results come in and have what they hope will be a victory party. And of course, after that, no rest for any of them. Everyone says straight from here they're planning to head over to the East Coast and to New Hampshire because we have just more than a week to go before the primary there.
It'd be interesting to see if they show up for tomorrow night's State of the Union address. Do you have any word on that, or do you not know?
I know that Amy Klobuchar said she's planning to go straight to New Hampshire, so I haven't heard from the other candidates what their plan is. But, I think after missing out on so much time of campaigning here in Iowa, they really want to take advantage of time out talking to voters as much as they can. And so I think that's the plan for a lot of these candidates, just to get straight to New Hampshire because they know how important that race is as well. Okay. Marcy Gonzalez at her first Iowa caucus, former Eyewitness News reporter, now reporting for ABC News on the caucus trail. And Amy, great, Amy, you said Amy Klobuchar, so that's what I'm thinking. Marcy, thank you, and it's great seeing you. Good luck to you tonight. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate it.
All right, take care, Marcy. You were unable to hear what she said, but basically she was saying that the 4 senators who were in the jury trial flew back. They were here last night and they flew back. Then they came back here tonight. They're coming back.
And the Senate's in session again tomorrow.
They have to get up.
They have to get up
and go back.
Or tonight, or fly through the night.
And I don't think they're flying commercial at this point in the campaign.
No, you
They're
can't.
flying private planes.
But you know what would be smart? If they all got a plane together.
Yeah.
Right. And
Well,
save
I think
money,
they do sort of get along, so that would not be
Yeah.
a bad idea. Maybe they'll all go on.
Better for
on
the
Biden's
environment.
plane. After tonight, I'm not sure that they'll still be like that. Everyone go on Biden's plane. I'm not so sure that's going to work.
No, I'm not quite sure that's going to work.
Let's explore for another minute. I want to go back to an embed who was with the Elizabeth Warren campaign, but I want to talk to both of you. What's going to happen? How big? You touched on it a little bit, Dave. How big is this night, the Iowa caucus?
It's only 41 delegates out of what 1,900.
Did I say 47?
I think it's 41.
It's 41. You're right. 41.
You have to have. So Iowa.
It's just because it's first.
Because it's first. Iowa's not representative. It's 90% white. It's not representative for the rest of America. But because it is the first election in this long primary season, it's important because of that. And what you said earlier, I think, because of who comes in second, who comes in third, who is no longer viable after this. I want to see how Amy Klobuchar does tonight because she's polling at about 5 or 6%, and she doesn't have a lot of money. Pete Buttigieg also. He, though, has a lot of money.
Two Midwesterners.
I think he can stick around for a little bit longer. But if she does really, really badly tonight, given that she doesn't have a lot of money,
it's over.
And then also New Hampshire next week, if she doesn't do well there, I don't see her sticking around.
Her strength,
I agree.
Her strength, Christine, was that she said, "I'm from the Midwest," and if she can't do well in the Midwest, that says a lot too.
It does say a lot, but I think the way this election has played out so far, we started with the most diverse field in history, and we're probably ending up with a bunch of white guys, and that. It's a credit to us being the Democrats, how diverse we were, but we do have to step back at some point, and both as a party, but then collectively as a society and a media, if I say so, and look at what we do to women candidates and how this happened. And I think Amy, is a prime example of that.
And not just white guys. You said white guys, not just all white people. There were not going to be any women.
No.
You're worried about Elizabeth Warren tonight. You think that if she doesn't do well here, it's going to be curtains for her too.
Yeah, I think it's very bad for Elizabeth Warren if she doesn't do well tonight. She had a good summer surge, and then although she and Bernie basically have the same positions, she's lagging behind and sinking while he's now surging. So I'm worried about that.
Before we get into more weeds, I want to talk to someone from the Elizabeth Warren coverage campaign. One of our not yet. I'm told she's not there. We're waiting for someone from Elizabeth Warren's campaign. This is we look at Elizabeth Warren. Let me explore some more about. Go ahead.
Warren did a very interesting thing that I don't think any other campaign is doing. She is providing child care tonight for caucus goers who don't have child care, or two people families, right? So one doesn't have to stay home and watch the kids. That's very, very smart. It's a great message. It's very respectful of voters and caucus goers. It'll be interesting to see if that gives an edge that we're just not calculating.
Do you know what's the interesting thing is that it's much the same personality she brings to when she takes selfies and stands in line for hours so that people who come to her rallies can take selfies. It's that sort of personal thing. Here's what I'm going to do for you.
And respectful, very, very respectful of a voter or a caucus goer's time.
Dave, I looked at some stats about Iowa, and it's pretty amazing. The number of Republicans and Democrats the registration kind of thing is sort of equal. And there are a lot of
swing state.
Yeah, there are a lot of independents. In fact, there are more independents than there are, unless I'm reading wrong figures, there are more independents than there are Republicans or Democrats. So this is an interesting, test.
I think the other reason, though, that why we're focused so much on Iowa is because it kicks off what is the central question going on in the Democratic Party right now. Is it a party of moderates, of Joe Biden, Mike Bloomberg, Amy Klobuchar, Pete Buttigieg, or is it going to move to the left? Is it going to be the party of Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren? And that is a real pull that we see within the party right now. And the central overriding question right now with Democrats is who can beat Donald Trump? That's what they care more about than anything else in the world. And I think there is a lot of worry right now within the Democratic Party. Can a Bernie Sanders, can an Elizabeth Warren beat Donald Trump?
And if they can't, can Joe Biden? And if Joe Biden can Michael Bloomberg? We were talking earlier before we started, Christine, that the sort of heart and soul battle for the Democratic Party, and what it becomes is at war with the heart and soul battle of the Democrats' goal to beat Donald Trump. And the two are not necessarily in sync with each other.
Right. I mean, they may be, we don't know, but there is a big internal debate going on in the Democratic Party right now about, is Bernie Sanders, is Elizabeth Warren, someone like that, electable because they are farther to the left? But then there is a very strong left to the party right now who are saying, you're only going to get elected with us, our youth, our urgency, our votes, and we're not happy with the so-called moderates. So it is really what happens here collectively will send a big message and really frame the Democratic Party for at least the next decade, I believe.
Okay, this is a debate that it really has at its heart some of the people who came into office in 2018. AOC is a case in point.
Right.
And they have a lot of control and power, and they have tasted it, and they are hungry for it, and they're pretty skilled at using it.
But be careful and know how to use it. We saw, one of the squad members over the weekend not just booing at the mention of Secretary Clinton.
Encouraging the shush.
Absolutely.
Don't shush them.
Starting a chant almost. So I think getting into power is obviously an amazing and great accomplishment, but once you're in it and rocketing in it, you have to be careful how you use it.
She was trashing Hillary Clinton.
That really bugged me, because those women may very well not have been in the office that they have were it not for Hillary Clinton.
And her life's work.
And her life's work. Yes, she lost. Yes, maybe she was a bad candidate, but she did great things for tons of people, and especially women. And it was just astounding to me that these women women congresspeople who were on stage would actually boo Hillary Clinton as Democrats. It was just astounding.
To be fair, she did apologize for it and later said, I was wrong and I shouldn't have said that. So to be fair, but she did say it, and that's what we started the conversation with. That's what made the headlines. Let me talk a little bit about Mike Bloomberg. And before we go to that, one of my colleagues at KGO, our ABC affiliate in San Francisco, I had an opportunity to interview Bloomberg recently, and I want to get your thoughts on. I hope you're going to be able to hear this. Maybe you won't be able to hear it. If we could put it on studio mic, Stephanie, that would be great, so they can hear it too. And let's listen it. Good. Here, you'll be able to hear it.
Great.
What's your strategy behind that? Do you see California as a state you have to win?
Well, I skipped over the first four because I just entered too late. You couldn't build an organization, so which means you're going to go for the Super Tuesday, which California is in this time. So that's what I'm competing on. I've got to go and explain what I would do. At this point, there has not been one vote taken yet in this election. So there's certainly plenty of time.
Not one vote taken in this election yet, except tonight is going to happen in Iowa. How closely is he watching this, and what's he thinking?
Oh, I'm sure Mayor Bloomberg and his people are watching tonight like hawks. They'll say they're not, but they're fibbing. Because it really will send, what happens tonight will set the stage in a lot of ways for Super Tuesday. Now, like Bill Clinton, you can have a comeback kid in New Hampshire, but this really sets the path towards who's going to win Super Tuesday or who has to fight like hell to win Super Tuesday.
And if we see Joe Biden falter tonight.
That's good for Mike.
And that's good for Mike. And I think that we can pretty well bet that Bernie Sanders is going to win New Hampshire next week. He's probably going to win Nevada. He's only 5 points behind Joe Biden in South Carolina.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's a bad poll.
You think
I think it's a bad poll.
I think Biden is going to win South Carolina.
Yeah,
I was stunned when I saw that.
It's a bad poll.
But still, I think if Biden somehow falters in these first few states, doesn't do as well as expected, and if Klobuchar drops out, or if Pete Buttigieg maybe drops out, it's wide open for Mike Bloomberg.
Yeah, that's true.
And what about the rap that he came in, and he's getting a lot of criticism from all those candidates up there, except for Donald Trump. He's getting criticism for not being tall, but he's getting criticism that he's buying this election, and he's spent $300 million so far. He's going to do that again. He's just put up a $250 million headquarters in Midtown Manhattan, state of the art for everything.
Paid $10 million for an ad last night on the Super Bowl. So look, I think the criticism that he's buying the election, it's not a criticism, it's a fact. It's an absolute fact. So they can't run away from that. The question is, at the end of the day, well, there's a couple of questions. Do voters care? right? Do they care that he bought the message they're hearing over and over again?
Did they care that
Do they
Mr.
not
Trump said he sort of paid for everything himself? He didn't, of course, but he claimed he did. Did they care about that?
Apparently,
4 years ago?
they did not.
I don't think the average voter cares
About that.
about that. I think that they see Mike Bloomberg, if he wants to spend his own $300 million and he has that kind of money, I think there are some Democrats who are concerned about that, but I think overall American voters, they don't.
And what about the fact that he's sort of got the DNC to change the rules about how many donations you get?
Well, I think the changing of the rules raises a lot of issues. Now, at some point, we're probably going to have to, in the DNC, move away from percentages, probably. But, I mean, a number of donations,
right.
Probably. But there is no way to argue that this didn't help Mike Bloomberg. It does. And what effect would it have had if it was put in place earlier for a Cory Booker or Kirsten Gillibrand or Castro or O'Rourke? So I think you should have said, and at the rules are this, and then at the next point, we don't know, they're this.
Point.
So that didn't happen, and people couldn't calibrate and plan. So I don't think it was a good thing that was done.
I want to toss it back to Des Moines, Iowa, because we are on kind of a time frame there. If I could have Stephanie pull up the sound on the studio, then you'll be able to hear countdown veteran Cheyenne Hazlitt, who's with the Elizabeth Warren campaign. Cheyenne, good to see you again.
Hey, Bill, how are you?
Good. Not as busy as you are, though. This is your first caucus and first primary as well, I understand, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so tell me what the candidate you've been covering since the beginning of time, it seems now, Elizabeth Warren. What's it like right now? Is she back from Washington after sitting as a juror today in the closing arguments by both sides in the president's impeachment trial? And what are the challenges she's facing? I mean, a lot of people are saying and projecting that if she doesn't do well here, come in second, it's going to be a little problematic for her.
A lot of these candidates, there's 4 of them in the top, and they all have a lot at stake coming out of Iowa. Warren has been benched for 13 days because of the impeachment trial, which has gone on for some 20 days now. She's gotten out onto the trail for 8 days during that, but I've been with her back in D.C. for the impeachment trial, and when I showed up here this past weekend, I mean, you felt a sense of relief from her supporters that she was back, that she was here in time for the caucus. It was kind of a, okay, let's do this thing. Everything is going to work out kind of a mentality. And then back to D.C. again today. She was on a plane there last night, and she has returned to Iowa. And we ran into her in the hotel actually earlier today. So we know she's here and that she made it. But it has absolutely thrown a wrench in a lot of the plans. And like you mentioned, I have been covering this campaign since last January when she came out here for her exploratory phase, just a trial run through Iowa. And I can guarantee you that when she announced to run or made the decision to run back in late 2018, 2019, she did not expect that she would be in Washington, D.C., fulfilling a constitutional duty right up until the day of the caucus in Iowa.
Yeah, that's a great point, Cheyenne. A lot of people that watch the impeachment trial, and they'd see Elizabeth Warren, every day talking to reporters on camera on national television or on cable television, and they would say, well, listen, look at that. She's getting more publicity than she would ever get in Iowa. But that's really missing the point. Iowa is upfront and personal, not talking to a reporter on national television, right?
Absolutely, yeah. In Iowa, you are meeting people face to face, and I do see a lot of the same supporters at these rallies. Time and time again, people coming out to show support. But I also met yesterday a woman who was completely undecided, who said she was between Warren and Buttigieg. She was seeing Warren in Ames, Iowa last night, and she was waiting to make her decision in those final hours of the day yesterday, the day before caucus day. And she says she's still going to wait until she gets to her caucus site tonight and hears the debates from her neighbors, her friends, her community. So, yeah, it's such a personal process here, and it isn't quite the same, absolutely. But also, Iowa is a bunch that is extremely well read on the news and is paying pretty close attention to politics, especially right now in the lead up. So it's crunch time, and I think people definitely were watching. And another way that we know that is, like, every single event yesterday that Warren was at and the day before, and every time that she's been out back in Iowa during the impeachment trial, she has gotten more questions than ever about how she will bring the country back together if she's elected. A lot of people concerned about unity, not so much asking about the nitty-gritty, the arguments of the case that Warren is seeing play out in Washington, but wondering how she's going to bring people back together if she's the nominee.
Cheyenne, this is Dave Evans. I'm a reporter here in New York. I just wanted to ask you, and it's fine if you don't know, but I was just wondering, is she going to go to some of the caucus sites tonight and, you know, do some of the talking and campaigning at the actual caucus sites? Or does she stay completely, you know, we won't see her until there's some kind of something at her party headquarters? And also then, does she have to fly back to Washington tonight to be back at the impeachment trial?
So the second question we do not know the answer to. We're not sure what the next 2 days of impeachment will look like. And we will see her tonight at a caucus site. Yes, that we do know. She's going to be in the Des Moines area at a caucus site. And then we'll see her here at this caucus night party giving her remarks at the end of the night.
There were times I remember, Cheyenne, with other candidates, and Dave, you've been there,
yeah,
where they actually go to several caucuses. But I think for some of these senators who are flying in, barely getting there in time, you know, it's a one and done thing. They get to one caucus, it'll be good, maybe two. But there were many, and there have been years past when people are driving in the snow and the storm, trying to get to as many caucuses as they can. I assume that's not going to happen, Cheyenne.
It's hard to tell. I think that a lot of the candidates have been bouncing around to different events today, but we know for a fact that they'll all be back in their headquarters as the results come in, and everybody will be anxiously waiting for the results.
Of course. Cheyenne Hazlitt, embedded with the Elizabeth Warren campaign. A great job as always, and really nice to have you back on Countdown again. You're a veteran of Countdown at this point in the 2020 race for the White House. Thanks, and you take care of yourself. We'll see you back here on the East Coast. Thanks, Cheyenne. So you heard what she said. You know, she's trying to characterize what she feels. It's very interesting when you're in embed, because all of a sudden you try not to wed yourself to the campaign, but that's the only people. Those are the people you're seeing for the entire time. For a year, she's been with this campaign. They all, I think, try to stay objective.
But it's hard.
It's very hard. It's hard not to like someone, no matter how much you disagree with them, when you're sitting there. This is crucial for Elizabeth Warren.
I think so. I mean, look, there's a strong belief that Bernie's going to win New Hampshire. Those are the two New England candidates, right? It's not great for her. She's not going to win New Hampshire. Things could change, but to not win or really close second Iowa and then be suspected to lose New Hampshire to the other progressive, those are big body blows to a campaign.
Dave, what are we going to be talking about tomorrow morning?
I think we're going to be looking at the road ahead. And Chris and I kind of disagree a little bit. I kind of figured that this will be over, the primary season will be over the middle of March, but Chris made a good point when we were talking beforehand that maybe New York, we vote on April 28th, Connecticut votes on April 28th, New Jersey, June 2nd. So maybe if this does go on and on and on and we don't have this cleared up,
could be a tri-state thriller.
It could be. I wanted to point out one thing before we say goodbye. The polls I saw about the horse race among registered Democratic voters, Biden with 26, Sanders with 21, that's very close. Then Warren drops down to 16. Bloomberg is up now.
Yeah, to like 12 or something.
Above Buttigieg, and that's a big thing, even though he's not in Iowa. Here are two other things. Among black voters, Biden with 36%, Sanders with 13%.
That's never changed for him.
And
that was true last time, 4 years ago. He has never had support in the African-American community of significance. Some say it goes back to his votes on guns, which have not, at times he's gotten decent ratings from the NRA. So that's a question, and that's fact.
And that's going to be a problem for Bloomberg as well if he tries to stay in this race.
And I think that's one of the worries within the Democratic Party. The Democratic candidate traditionally does not win unless you have a good, strong turnout for the black vote. And if the black vote isn't there, if the eventual nominee is Bernie Sanders or if it's Mike Bloomberg, that's worrisome.
And black women. Most of all, the foundation of our party, thank God.
Stop and frisk, do you remember that? And now here's one more thing. Among Hispanic registered Democratic voters, Sanders with 30, Biden with 22. It's interesting.
That kind of surprises me.
That is interesting. That surprises me.
Yeah, interesting. So that's two things to watch. Very complicated what's happening in Iowa. It's a complicated thing. There's something like 1,600 sites for 41 delegates. They have you vote for some of them, and then you
and if
mix
you don't
and
get
match
to
them.
15% on the first round,
the second
you're considered
round,
not viable.
not viable.
And then those people can go and coalesce with another group, and it's very complicated.
Caitlin, do we have time to show that? There we go. Let's do that really quickly, because I do want to show this. Look at these 4 graphics, and just bear with me, folks, because it's complicated. The caucuses operate very different. It's complicated. Caucuses begin. Voters declare their support for a candidate by actually physically moving to its designated area in the room for a particular candidate. It's like dancing.
Yeah.
This is called the first
Bad
alignment. Any candidate that has 15% of the voters at that site is considered a viable candidate, as Dave said. I told you this was complicated. Round 2, voters who supported a non-viable candidate can move to back an already viable candidate. This is harder than a game. Or can move to another unviable candidate group to make them viable. It is like a board game, as I said. After the moving around is complete, this is called the final alignment. It's like Jeopardy. From there, the state party translates the numbers, divvies up the state delegates among the candidates. A candidate needs at least 15% of the vote statewide to be assigned any delegate. 41 delegates, as you see up there, up for grabs. By comparison, California has 10 times that number. New York has nearly 7 times that number. Does that make sense? It didn't really make sense to me. It's very crystal clear the way we've explained it, but I just worry that for most people, it's sort of, they don't really get that, and they maybe shouldn't until it's all over.
It's very hard to get.
It is.
And it's not a secret ballot, certainly.
Right.
Because you're raising your hand.
Right.
It's a hand.
You're literally in the gym. It's like, visions of a bad high school dance, right? Where no one wanted to dance with you. So that's all I can think of it as.
I'm not sure we could top that. Christine Quinn, thank you for joining us
You're
tonight.
very welcome.
Political reporter Dave Evans with Eyewitness News. Dave, thank you for joining us as well. And that's going to do it for this edition of The Countdown. We're going to try to come to you every Tuesday night. Next Tuesday night, this is Monday. Next Tuesday is the New Hampshire primary, and we're going to be back here again next Tuesday night doing it all over, trying to figure out what comes next. This stuff is so important. And for most people, it should be very exciting as well. And when the election comes to your state, we hope you vote, because nothing's more important than that. For all of us here at Channel 7 and on our website and all of our platforms, thanks for watching. We'll see you back here tonight for Eyewitness News at 11 o'clock.